come over here. I want you to sit. I said, Rodger, I just sat there and cried for an hour and a half with this beautiful man and this gorgeous woman who are 3 times my age. And I said, Jen, you are marvelous in your clinical pastoral education. You have gifts for ministry. And they were abundant in that room at that moment. Credentials are important. I love credentials. But right now we're interested in my gifts. 5. This is a term. This is God's sense of humor. This really is a term, medical term. You get this, right? Presbyopia, right? Okay. From long-term planning to short-term planning. Presbyopia is really to see far away. You just can't see what's close up. You get that, right? Okay. Like right in front of you. You just can't see it. Okay. Long-term planning and short-term planning. I think we have to be more short-term planning than long-term planning. Tell me why.
Attention spans.
Attention span. Good point. Because attention span. Other reasons?
We're in a garage sale.
We're in a garage sale. We're in a rummage sale. Exactly right. Jody's right.
You don't get to the end if you don't take care of now.
Oh, nicely. Golly, that's brilliant. You don't get to the end if you don't take care of what's right in front of you. The issue of change, right? Stuff is changing so fast. Okay, some of us in this room, you're my age and older, and you remember when cell phones first came out? Remember? When cell phones first came out, how big were they?
Huge.
You know, I have a big head. They're bigger than my head. Okay, they're huge. Okay? And so I live in Atlanta, and so I fly out of Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. And so I think this is a Mars-Venus, male-female thing. I think there are different rules about public restrooms for men versus women. Okay? I don't know this firsthand, but I think I've understood this to be true, right? I think that you women, by and large, you behave differently in public restrooms than men do. Okay? I'll tell you, men, basically we have 2 rules. Okay? In a public restroom, you don't talk and you don't look around. Those are the rules. Okay? So I'm waiting for a flight, yet again, at Hartsfield-Jackson. I go in and I'm using the urinal, okay? And a guy comes to my right and he goes, "Hey, how's it going?" I want to look, I want to break a rule. He already broke a rule. Okay? So I ignore him. And he goes, "Is it going okay?" And then I think, oh, older white gentleman, looks kind of distinguished, he's wearing a suit. He could be a Presbyterian. You know, I just preached at First Presbyterian Church, one of our high churches downtown a few weeks ago. Maybe he was there. I wouldn't know it because, you know, a couple thousand members, but I preached all 3 services, and you could be a donor. Oh, this is important. And so I say, "Fine. How's it going with you?" He goes, "Good, good." And then continues, "I'm just calling to see if you got my email." So on the right side of this head that I can't see is one of those stupid little blinking things. And he is on the phone while he's using the bathroom, which is wrong on a whole series of levels. And he's probably thinking, "Dang, buddy, you're breaking a bunch of rules." So here's why I think agility and short-term planning is crucial. Because you and I, we don't know what communications technology, information technology, you know, 6 years ago, we thought the only creature on the face of the earth that could tweet was a bird. 26 years ago, the only creature on the face of the earth that could make a website was a spider. And now we know differently. Those are both in our lexicons. They're both in our dictionaries. Okay? Tweeting, websites, everything's happening so fast. Leaders in the Church of Jesus Christ have to be agile enough, have to be looking right here to see what's coming. I think we have to be assessing our objectives and our responses to the Lord's leading every 3 to 6 months, not 3 to 6 years. My dad was after he was moderator of the Presbytery. Sorry, Kevin. He ended up being the moderator of the Presbytery of Seattle's Long-Range Planning Committee. His committee was charged with delivering a 10-year plan for the Presbytery of Seattle. It took his committee 7 years to So he sent me a note, email-wise, and said, we finally got done our committee's work. And I wrote back and said, Dad, hasn't this been going on for a while? He wrote back 7 years. And I said, so I wrote back and said, Dad, so now is this a 3-year plan for the Presbytery of Seattle? And he wrote back and said, Rodger, you and I both know the problem is, as soon as we passed that 10-year plan, it was outdated, obsolete, because we were moving so slowly. None of us thought the recession was going to take this long. None of us anticipated that there would be yet another revolution in Egypt. None of us thought that our Christian sisters and brothers in Egypt would be under siege right now, as they are. None of us thought that Syria would be in the midst of a civil war. None of us knew these things. We have got to be responsive and thoughtful and leading faithfully in these days. So 6, there's a shift from mass evangelism to one-on-one evangelism. And I actually love this one the most because I get, by and large, not all of us, I mean, historically, good grief, we started this. Jonathan Edwards, come on, that's our history. We did these revivals. We were the whole movement. Presbyterians were at the forefront of the great preaching in the fields. Come on, we brought the whole energy of the church to life. But now we're more reticent. We're not sure about this mass evangelism stuff, but I think there's a clear shift to one-on-one evangelism. One of my best friends from seminary from McCormick, where I graduated, her first call was to serve as a staff person for the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association out of the Cove in Asheville, North Carolina. She was on the Crusade staff, and she got laid off within 3.5 years. And I texted her and said, are you okay? And she said, yeah, I got laid off, but I actually got transferred, really. She said, nobody's asking for crusades anymore. Part of it is that Dr. Graham is dying. His wife, Ruth Bell Graham, a good Presbyterian, is already in heaven, and I'm sad. I think he's sad too. But Dr. Graham is dying, and his son, Franklin, is not his dad. The truth is, golly, really, the preacher of the family is Anne Graham Lotz, but she has the wrong equipment. So anyway, nobody's asking for mass crusade stuff anymore, okay? My friend, she said, everybody's talking about one-on-one stuff. So the Billy Graham Association has this huge department now on congregational evangelism, where you contact them and contract with them at a sliding scale, and they'll send 2 staff people out over the course of 18 months to meet with the congregation 6 times. And they help congregations learn, first through a prayer weekend, which is dynamic. All you do is pray. And then you begin to learn how do you talk to persons about Jesus that's not coercive or manipulative or shame-based or guilt-ridden, okay? And these are persons, by and large, whom you already know. So that's actually how it works, she said best. And so I was thinking about her and this shift, and I was yet again at the airport. And if you've been to Atlanta, you know we have an underground train that connects all the concourses. And this kid, at the last minute, the doors were closing, and this kid jumped on backpack. And I love this kid's earnestness. I could tell he was really earnest. And he scanned the car and ran up to this young couple that was holding onto a pole and each other. This beautiful young couple. And I called it the Velcro stage because they could not touch each other still on the pole. I mean, it was lovely. I love it. Anyway, he goes up to this couple at the pole and they're looking at each other, you know, in the days, and they're holding each other and the train's moving. And he goes, do you know Jesus? Okay. And first of all, I thought, thanks be to God you didn't talk to me. Don't talk to me. And she said, turned to him and said, what? And he goes, do you know Jesus? And then she said, don't you even want to know our names first? And he said, oh yeah, what are your names? And then, Concourse A. We are at Concourse A. And the doors opened, and the young couple went, and the guy went with them, thanks be to God. I was so cool. Falling up the escalators into Concourse A, but I thought, yeah, if you're going to talk to me about deep and meaningful things, then shouldn't you want to know our names first? Here's the challenge. What do you get when you cross a Jehovah's Witness and a Presbyterian? You get somebody who knocks on your door and has no idea what to say. Okay, that's not funny. You and I are leaders in Christ Church. Surely we have something to say. You are our ruling elders. You are our teaching elders. Surely we have something to say. Shouldn't we have something that's worthwhile to say to a world that is desperate for belonging and for hospitality and for the good news of Jesus Christ? Not in a coercive or shame-based or guilt-ridden or manipulative way, but surely we have something to say, you and I, in these days. This is the one that I've changed. I keep on changing these. So you know what these are? What are they? Oh, good job. These are pierogies. When I was driving over from Fort Wayne, I saw Warsaw. And I thought, yeah, okay. High tech, I think we're moving from high tech to high touch. This is not my idea. This comes from James Naisbitt in the last century. He wrote a book called Megatrends, 1980s. Naisbitt says, with the rise of high tech comes commensurate the rise of high touch. Okay? So I was privileged to ordain Kristen Strobel, who's an amazing, amazing woman, at First Presbyterian Church of Poland, Ohio. And after the ordination service, I preached. After the ordination service, there was a church supper. 5 different kinds of pierogies, okay? Homemade pierogies, right? I love this. This is a congregation of about 85 people, and they didn't cater. They're not going to cater. This is ridiculous. So everyone brings stuff from home, okay? I didn't know what pierogies were, all right? So, and they make me go first with Kristen and her family and others, things like the Presbytery and others were going first. And I'm like, Kristen, what are these? And she goes, oh, they're your pot stickers. Okay, cool, fine, thanks. Okay. Cultural translation, right? So I take one from the first dish, okay? Right away, on my hip is a little white woman and says to me, excuse me, Pastor, you didn't take
One for me.
mine. Mine are way better, it's the third dish down. So I reach and take some of the third dish, and there's one right on my hip that says, excuse me, Pastor, you passed mine, which are better than hers. So I have 5 pierogies on my plate. And I will tell you, these are kind of gut bombs, to be serious. It's heavy stuff. But they were delicious, because one had sauerkraut, which was great. One had just red cabbage, then one had pork, and these were fantastic. These were amazing, okay? And so, but I have to get to the airport. Elder's taking me to the airport, to Pittsburgh Airport, which is like an hour and a half away, to get my last flight out so I can teach in the morning on Monday. And so I'm walking out to the parking lot, and this woman comes up with a covered dish with oil over it, and says, Pastor, this is for you to take home. And I love this, because this is like Japanese Presbyterian Church in Seattle, and McKee Christian Church in Honolulu. After covered dish suppers, everyone gets a plate to go. I love this. So Kristen comes up to the car and says, Roger, you don't have to take out the plane. I said, Kristen, pierogies. Homemade food. I'm taking this with me. She goes, okay. And she laughs. We hug, kiss, okay, bye, see ya. And so I get dropped off at Pittsburgh Airport. And it's like 8:30 now. Last flights are heading out. And so it's not very many people. And so I go to TSA, right? And I get the grate in, and I put my stuff in there, and I put it in place. And it goes in. Behind the machine is this African-American woman. And she looks up at me and says, excuse me, sir, what is that? There's foil over it and stuff. And I said, it's a dish from a covered dish supper at a Presbyterian church. And she goes, that's church food? And I said, yes, ma'am, it is. And she goes, I'll buy it off you. I said, no, ma'am, it's my food. So it comes out of the machine, and there's a huge, he looked Polish background, huge, big white boy, okay, with a crew cut, etc., blue TSA shirt, and he goes, did you say church food? And I said, yes, sir. I said, pierogies, fresh, homemade pierogies. And he goes, I'll pay double whatever she's So I said, no, excuse me, it's my food. And then he goes, the stupid kid, he goes, doesn't Jesus say something about sharing? If you read those stories, it talks nothing about pierogies. And so I take it to the gate, okay? I'm eating, I uncover it, I'm waiting for the plane to board, I'm eating the food. This guy, I'm in a suit, etc., and tie. This guy comes by, rollerboard, suit and tie, stops, looks at my food, and says, excuse me, sir, where did you get that? And I said, First Presbyterian Church, Poland, Ohio. He goes, not here in the airport. And I said, no, sir. And he goes, dang it, and he walks off. With the rise of high tech comes the rise of high touch. I think people are yearning to be welcomed home, for a taste of home. Okay? We can do that. Some of you, you know this firsthand. Come on, Church of Jesus Christ. We can do this high touch. We were built for this. In a rummage sale period, oh gosh, we're only 27 members. No, you're not. You are already twice the size of the disciples who were named. And we know there were women who were following along, someone that couldn't clean. So we know that there were women who were there with the men as well. This small group of women and men, they changed the history of the world. How dare you sit there and tell me we're only 27 members? You have no faith. Come on. This is the Church of Jesus Christ. We could do this high touch. We can do this. We are built for this. We were created for this. In an age when people say they're isolated and alone. Last one. So I think we're moving from discipleship to apostleship. So there's a movie from the last century, and it's on the right. And it's called The Blues Brothers, and Jake and Elwood Blues, and it's a whole bizarre movie. And it's Dan Aykroyd, Jim Belushi before he died. Jim Belushi? John Belushi, thank you. Jim Belushi's still alive, thank you. John, yeah, thank you. I was confused too. Anyway, in the Blues Brothers, they have a phrase. Throughout the phrase, they say, we're on a mission from God, right? And lest I be tribal, I think we're participating in the Missio Dei, which is Latin for the mission of God. I think we are participants in God's mission. I think that's what we're called to, okay? This is not my idea. This comes from President Titi, who's the immediate past president of Luther Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. A brilliant man. This man is way smarter than me. Dr. Titi says he thinks the 20th century church was a discipleship era church, where we were trying to culture and nurture and educate disciples. He said the 21st century church is an apostolic church. Literally, an apostle is somebody who is nicely done, well done, Pastor, is sent. Someone who is sent. T.D. says our job is to go out. We're not a discipleship church. And he again, this is not either or. I get discipleship. I'm about Christian education, spiritual formation. That's what I do. Okay? But we're talking about discipleship not as the end result. Apostleship is the end result. To send people out. So I'm going to end with this. So I'm doing a focus group outside of Des Moines, Iowa. And everybody in the group pretty much, we're at a restaurant, we never met in churches because that would be too difficult to get people to come. So I'm doing this focus group of people who are not in churches by and large, but there was one couple of young adults who were in a Presbyterian church. And I call them the aberrations in my research. They're outliers. And anyway, after the group was done, I asked them to stay because I wanted to know. Tell me about, you're sort of odd. You're young adults and you're actually in a Presbyterian church. Tell me about why you're doing this. And they told me. They said, we moved here from New Jersey, both of us. We went to Rutgers University, fell in love when we were juniors, got married after our senior year, and we got headhunted, a term I'd never heard before, where corporations, I think you know this, except for Colorado, the central part of the U.S., is losing population. So Nebraska, Iowa, the Dakotas, increasingly, well less so now because they've got oil in North Dakota, et cetera, but still, they're trying to recruit people to come in, okay, to the states, central states. And so, and there are parts of Indiana doing the same thing. So they got headhunted by 2 different firms. And they thought, well, we're young, we don't know anybody in Iowa, let's just give it a shot. And their family and friends are like, are you crazy? But they thought, no, let's try. They moved to Iowa, Des Moines, and they were able to buy a home, which they never could have afforded in northern New Jersey. They got good jobs. They actually really, really liked it. And were there, they've been there for 3.5 years. When the young woman was doing a quick self-breast exam, no history of breast cancer in her family, doing a quick self-breast exam, and she felt a lump for the first time in her left breast. And she recalls, she told me the story, said she called her doctor's office, no, she called her mom first back in New Jersey. And her mom said, oh, sweetheart, we have no history, and that's a big part of it, so it probably is just a cyst. Actually, it's time. You're probably due for a cyst. I've had several of those. You should get it checked out. Okay, I should get it checked out. So she calls her physician's office. She made a point to tell me this, that she recalled calling and said, hi, this is who I am, and I've had checkups, and I felt a lump, and I need to see, and the scheduler in the office said, well, just come by. And she said, well, when's the next appointment? Oh, sweetheart, just come by, and we'll see. She goes, this never would happen in New Jersey. So she ran by on her lunch break and saw the physician. And the physician said, I don't mean to alarm you, but she said to her, I think this is worth a look, so I'm going to refer you. She said, okay. And she called her mom, and then talked to her dad also. They're different workplaces. And so this is, and they both said, oh, I think that's probably good. Just err on the side of caution, that's good. She goes to the specialist, and he says, I don't mean to alarm you, but this is my work, and this is worth a biopsy. And she says, oh, okay, so anxiety's rising. She gets a call from him in 8 days and says, I need to see you and your husband as soon as possible. So she goes in. He tells her, we've got a stage 4 cancer. And he's afraid it already has metastasized. She said, this is very rare, but I think it's pretty aggressive. And we've got some choices to make. And you've got some time. I don't want to alarm you right now, but this is serious. You've got some choices to make. She calls her mom, who flies out right away with her dad. They both fly out. And they're just distraught. Her mother-in-law, father-in-law fly out as well. Her sister flies out, and they're just talking. They decide on one radical mastectomy of her left breast. They decide on, and they're going to go major chemo, major radiation, the whole thing. Everyone stays for a while, increments, and then she has surgery, and she heads back home. And she said, like 4 days after being home, everybody had used up, at least initially, their time off. Because her mom is still working, dad's still working, etc., in-laws still working, but they were going to come by later. But she already had her first major chemo and radiation simultaneously. Okay, so she's